Yes, good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be here on this beautiful Wednesday morning, the 12th of, oh, sorry, beautiful Thursday morning, the 12th of February, 2026. I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you had a wonderful night slash evening. I hope you enjoyed the football that did transpire from yesterday's action in the Premier League, as well as the Coppa Italia, the Coppa del Rey, where Athletic Bilbao lost to Real Sociedad by goal to nil. Tonight, will be Barcelona and Atletico Madrid will be in action for the same occasion for the Copa del Rey semi-finals. So all that action is going to be all that is going to be ongoing in the coming couple of days. But yeah, I hope you guys will did enjoy all that action. Premier League match day 26 does wrap up with Arsenal trip to the G-Tech Stadium. Very, very important game, a very significant game. Every game from now on for the Arsenal in the Premier League is meant to be played like a final. And the reason for that, or the rationale for that, is quite very simple. Why? Because Manchester City yesterday beat up against Fulham for the 20th time across all competitions to go within just 3 points behind Arsenal. And the Man City players will be watching and cheering Brentford on, a side that has not beaten Arsenal in the last five meetings. But it's a different man in charge in Keith Andrews. He's their former manager in Thomas Frank has since been sacked at Tottenham Hotspur. So we're going to be digesting all that in today morning's broadcast. Sean Dyche, following their goalless draw against Wolverhampton Wanderers, was equally shown the exit. So Sean was shown the exit at Nottingham Forest. That means Nottingham Forest are in the market searching for their fourth manager of their season, having sacked Nuno Espirito Santo, Ange Postecoglou, and now Sean Dyche. So really, that's the significance of that news regarding Nottingham Forest. I'm sure a part of Evangelos Marinakis, I'm not sure people have many regrets, but if Evangelos Marinakis has any regret, it could be the sacking of Nuno Espirito Santo when he didn't need to. Yes, there were some issues between the two, between him and the club, but they were not beyond irreconcilable differences, not one bit. So anyways, I will be talking about that in today's broadcast, and I hope you do enjoy it. For those of you that were part that kept us company for last night's broadcast, as we did the watch along, for the live updates from the Premier League, for the Man City game, for the Liverpool game, as they won away to Sunderland, we really, really do appreciate you there on that front. So we are here to continue with the conversation. But where do we start it from? There is only one place to start. Yesterday, Tottenham Hotspurs did sack their manager in Thomas Frank. Yes, they sacked Thomas Frank just a day after he had sworn, literally, not practically, but literally, that he was 1000% sure he would be in charge of the North London Derby on February 22nd, when Tottenham Hotspurs welcome Arsenal at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Well, he won't be there. He won't be the man in the dugout because he has since been shown the exit. He was fired after a spell of 17 games with only 2 victories and 1 in the last 8 in as far as the Premier League was concerned. While they did well in the Champions League, the Premier League left some really, really wanting performances. And yeah, it sort of come to that he had to be sacked. He had to be moved on. There was a lot of agitation amongst the crowd, amongst the Tottenham fan base, some of those singing that you will get the sack in the morning, and perhaps they will call themselves foretellers for having foretold that he will be getting sacked in the morning, because Vinay Venkatesham, the Tottenham CEO, decided to take action just as much as his peers to sack the 52-year-old Danish international who had spent and stabilized Brentford in a period of over 6 years. So he was shown the exit, and that means he is another Tottenham manager that has been sacked in recent times. He replaced Ange Postecoglou on June the 12th, after Ange Postecoglou himself was sacked despite winning the club a major silverware when they beat up against Man United in the Europa League finals to win the UEFA Europa League last season. So he comes in and is sacked. But before Ange Postecoglou, you had Antonio Conte, who was equally sacked. And then his assistant, I think Christian Stellini, Christian Stellini took over as interim. The interim was sacked, and then Ryan Mason took over the club until the end of the season. But ever since 2012, when Tottenham Hotspurs had Harry Redknapp in charge between 2008 and 2012, they went through a bit of turbulent time with managerial changes, because when Harry Redknapp leaves, they hire former Chelsea boss and ex-FC Porto manager in Andreas Villas-Boas. So Andreas Villas-Boas takes charge of the team for the 2012-2013 season. They part ways with him eventually, and then Tim Sherwood takes over. He was there in charge for one season, 2013-2014, and they part ways with him, and that's when they bring in Mauricio Pochettino, who had been at Southampton for a year and a half, and he steered the club for the next for nearly 5 years when he took charge of them between 2014 and 2019. Now, in 2019, he guided the team to the finals of the UEFA Champions League, but 6 months later, he was equally shown the exit before the incoming of Jose Mario Felix Mourinho to see through that season. Mourinho himself, in the 2020-2021 season, he was sacked just days before their Carabao Cup final against Man City, which they eventually lost by 1-0. One of the biggest decision blunders that a management team has ever committed, because you do not sack a manager like Jose Mourinho when you have a cup final to play. Win the cup final, and then you can sack him. That's it. But that was a huge mistake. So when Mourinho gets sacked, of course, I think it was again Ryan Mason who took charge there as an interim before they brought in Nuno Espirito Santo, who had part ways with Wolverhampton Wanderers. Nuno Espirito Santo did not last long, because by November he had been sacked. When he gets sacked, then they bring in former Chelsea manager in Antonio Conte, who guided them through the rest of that season. That was 2021-2022 Premier League season. And then he starts the 2022-2023 Premier League season. And that's when he gets sacked himself. You will remember the public spat he had about his bosses and things like that. So really, it's not been easy. And right now, they are looking for interims. Speaking of interims, their former manager in Tim Sherwood, who is also a pundit, has voiced his opinion to say it would be an honor to come and manage the team, at least until the end of the season, or even beyond that. But he does say perhaps he's a bit talkative for tests, but they want somebody to come in and take charge of the team for the next 12 Premier League games, and the UEFA Champions League run, because they're out of all the other domestic cup competitions, which is why partly the Danish was sacked. Now, in looking at that, Tim Sherwood said it would be an honor to come and take on the reins. He said, 5 of those players are not good enough. You don't give them a sniff. They're not willing to fight. Then he talked about other things, how you need to give some players freedom, how you need to play with the handbrake off, on the front foot, and things like that. So we'll have to wait and see what kind of decision Tottenham Hotspur make. But as we wait for that, rumors have already started circulating that Tottenham Hotspur could be considering appointing Victor Pereira. For those of you that remember Victor Pereira, he was in charge over Wolverhampton Wanderers until he came in last season after the sacking of Gary O'Neill, helped Wolverhampton Wanderers avoid relegation. When they avoided relegation, he took charge of them at the start of this season, and they went 10 Premier League games without a win, and so they sacked him before bringing in Rob Edwards. Whereas their story has not changed much. They've only won one game ever since then, so he was sacked nonetheless. So he is being looked at a potential interim candidate for the vacant role at Tottenham Hotspurs, but we'll wait and see. Anyways, for the other managers that they are considering, of course, in terms of who is available. Good morning, son of Soweto. How are you doing? The name is not George, it's Robert, but thank you so much, son of Soweto. They are from South Africa. The fan of, I think, Mamelodi Sundowns. Thank you so much for sparing the moment to find us whenever you can. So anyways, no, Vitor Pereira is needed by Nottingham Forest. I think, but you never know. Anything can happen with managerial appointments, especially on an interim basis. Even he too can be an option. But in terms of permanent managers, of course, the huge clamor around the Tottenham fan base is Mauricio Pochettino. That's the man they want to be in charge. But Mauricio Pochettino is also in consideration for Man United. And he said he would be very willing one day to return. He hopes to return to Tottenham Hotspurs one day and do unfinished business. Now, there seems to be an obsession with Mauricio Pochettino with Tottenham fans. Now, I understand why, because he did well enough for them, even though he did not win any piece of silverware. But ask yourself, what if he's not there tomorrow? What then? Because for me, I always want to think about that as well, But anyways, the managerial transfer market isn't without option, because you have Xavi Hernandez, who formerly at Barcelona, he's still out of work ever since parting ways with Barcelona. This is the second season running with Hansi Flick taking over. He's been learning English and he's Premier League ready, according to Fabrizio Romano. Xabi Alonso part ways with Real Madrid. This was, I think, on the 12th of January. So he's available. We know what he did with Bayer Leverkusen. Then you have managers like Roberto Di Zerbi. This one on Monday, 10th February, part ways with Olympique Marseille. There knows the Premier League too well. He was at Brighton and Hove Albion, where he guided them to a 6th place finish in his debut campaign, although his second season wasn't as successful, but it was critical to, the upscaling of some of those young players, Kaoru Mitoma, Moises Caicedo, McAllister, and things like that. So he's also available if Tottenham are really, really looking for a new manager. Then the other name they could look at is Enzo Maresca. Enzo Maresca is also without a job following his sacking on the 1st of January from Chelsea. And then you have you also have a manager. We've talked about Xabi Alonso, Xavi Hernandez, Roberto Di Zerbi. You have Edin Terzic. This one is a former Borussia Dortmund manager. For those of you that remember, he won them, I think, the DFB Pokal in 2023, and then guided them to the finals of the UEFA Champions League in 2024. That's the manager we are talking about. But also, in terms of also the longer-term plan, you have managers that are going to be out of contracts. In the summer, we know Oliver Glasner is leaving Crystal Palace. We know for a fact that Marco Silva will be has his contract running out at Fulham. We know for a fact that Andoni Iraola at AFC Bournemouth is in a similar situation, so we'll have to wait and see. Now, speaking of sacked managers, allow me cross over to Nottingham Forest, because last night, following their goalless draw against Wolverhampton Wanderers, that's the bottom side in the Premier League, they decided to sack manager Sean Dyche. Now, Sean Dyche had only taken on the role just a couple of months ago following the sacking of Ange Postecoglou, who himself had replaced Nuno Espirito Santo, who had only taken charge of the club for only 3 games in the campaign. One of those being a loss to, I think, West Ham, was it? So He got sacked, Nuno Espirito Santo, at the start of the season. Of course, we know there was a rift between him that was growing between him and Evangelos Marinakis when he spoke about the growing gap or distance between him ever since the incoming of Edu Gaspar Daoud as the head of global football at Nottingham Forest. Then so he gets sacked. For me, a decision which I thought was really, really wrong, that for whatever wasn't going wrong on a personal level, fences could be mended, fences could be mended and they could iron out their differences and he sees the team going forward. But they decided to sack him, who soon later was hired by West Ham United when they fired, Graham Potter. So we've had a whole host of managers that have been sacked in the Premier League this season. Now, when he gets sacked, of course, they brought in Ange Postecoglou, who took charge of the team for about 8 games, did not win any, had 2 draws. I think one against Burnley, the other against what? And then he lost 6 games. The former Tottenham Hotspur manager and formerly at Celtic, he got sacked as well. Ange Postecoglou was shown the exit, and then in came Sean Dyche. Now he's equally been sacked. So who's next? Vitor Pereira is one of those that are thinking about. But if you're Nottingham Forest, for me, I'm going to, you think long term. First of all, think long term. Go get Roberto Di Zerbi. Why? I feel it's the kind of profile team he would suit. Yes, he's looked at as an elite manager, but let's be honest. He's been playing in those mid-table team waters. When you look at the example Brighton, of course, our Olympic Marseille is a notch higher than all of them, but we've seen it's not been very successful, quite successful for him. So bring him in. The task is simple: save the team from relegation, and then we will set the perfect team for you. And next season, you have our tasks in the UEFA Europa League. You have a game against Fenerbahce. If you can get us through to the round of 16, well and good, and we see how further we can go in the competition. But there's one major task: is get us out of this relegation conversation, because Nottingham Forest are a 4th from bottom, that is in 17th place with 26 points, following that 1-1 draw. With 27 points, following that 1-1 draw yesterday against Wolverhampton Wanderers, who themselves moved to 9 points, while Burnley are now at 18 points. That means they how many points? About 9 points adrift of Nottingham Forest. So really, at the time of sacking Thomas Frank, his team had slipped to 16th on the Premier League log with 29 points there. So we're just going to have and wait. So that means so far this season in the Premier League, there have been 6 managers that have been sacked. Let's go through them. Actually, maybe 7. You have Vitor Pereira at Wolverhampton Wanderers. You have Nuno Espirito Santo at Nottingham Forest. You have Graham Potter at West Ham United. You have Enzo Maresca at Chelsea. You have Ruben Amorim at Manchester United. You have Ange Postecoglou at Nottingham Forest. You have Sean Dyche at Nottingham Forest. Did I leave out any? The question is, who is next? Who is next? Will it be Anna Slot? Will it be him? Will it be Ed Howe of Newcastle? Because look around, guys. It's not been an easy season for managers. That's for sure. It's not been an easy season for managers. But anyways, it is what it is. That's the situation with managers. We'll leave that conversation at that for now. But perhaps later on in the day, we'll look to give you, another extended conversation about some of those sackings and what their options could be going into the managerial market. I'm looking forward to doing a video. Yesterday, I thought I would do one, but time ran away from me. But okay. It's sort of been a difficult period for the last, I think, 1.5 months for managers. Chelsea, Man United, Celtic, Real Madrid, Olympic Marseille, Tottenham Hotspur, Nottingham Forest have also changed managers. Then, okay, let's move on to the Arsenal game, because Arsenal will be in action tonight at 11 p.m. East African time, when they pay a visit to Brentford. Now, before we get to what is expected to be on the pitch, yesterday Mikel Arteta was speaking at a press conference, and he was being asked about the absentees, and he said they have to assess Bukayo Saka and Martin Odegaard. Trossard, he said Trossard was okay. Then Max Dorman is the only one that is absent, and we thought, well, after all, we had seen a picture of Martin Odegaard having returned to training. Not that it means he will be fit enough to start, but anyways, and I do not think Bukayo Saka or Martin Odegaard will be rushed. But for Martin Odegaard, the circumstances have since changed. Why? Because Arsenal have suffered a major injury to Kai Havertz. Ever since his return about a month ago, he had, positioned himself as the strong character that he is, scoring 2 goals and providing 2 assists. One of those goals, that's across all competitions. One of those goals coming up against Chelsea, his former side, in the return leg of the EFL Cup. He scored another goal against Kairat Almaty in the UEFA Champions League, where he also provided an assist, and things like that. So, and then over the weekend, as they beat up against Sunderland by 3-0, he also provided an assist. Both of his assists were to Victor Gyökeres, who the entire Arsenal fan base, and perhaps by extension the footballing world, thought he had started to conjure up a bit of a relationship with Victor Gyökeres. Unfortunately, he suffered a muscular injury that will see him out for an extended period there, or spell on the sidelines, and reports do indicate at least that he will be absent for the game against Brentford and is expected to miss the London derby against Tottenham Hotspur. That's the expectation, according to The Athletic. According to David Ornstein, according to David Ornstein of The Athletic, he says Kai Havertz is set for a spell on the sidelines with a muscular injury, a problem expected to keep the 26-year-old Arsenal forward out of the AFC games against Brentford and Tottenham Hotspur, but hoped not to be serious issue for the German international. That means he doesn't miss just those 2 games. It means he misses 4 games for the Arsenal, starting with Brentford tonight. Over the weekend, they play against Wigan Athletic at home. Then they play Wolverhampton Wanderers in midweek. That will be next week on Wednesday. Then after that, they play Tottenham Hotspur. So, whereas David Ornstein seems to suggest that the issue may not be as serious as first feared or as could be imagined, he missing 4 games is quite a lot. But of course, it's because of Arsenal have a bit of a fixture congestion. It's one game, they hop from one game to another. It's just a quick succession. But also, I did mention this upon his return, and I said, unfortunately for Kai Havertz, he's going to be vulnerable to injuries. Why? Because when you spend so much time on the sidelines, because look back, his injuries did not start this season. They did as far back as last season, when he suffered that hamstring injury during their training camp in Dubai. So when he suffers that hamstring injury, that was in January 2025, he went on to miss a chunk of the season of about 3 to 4 months thereabout. And then we come with the resumption of with the start of this season. He features for Arsenal against Man United, and then you remember he was a second half substitute, and then he goes on. He goes off. Like the game ends, and that's when we hear reports he's injured and that he has an issue in his knee. They ended up, I think he ended up going for surgery. What had initially been thought he would be maybe 6 weeks or thereabout, he ended up spending 5 months on the sidelines, particularly because he kept on, getting some setbacks. Particularly, I remember, you remember during the November international break, that's when his German national team manager, Julian Nagelsmann, revealed to the world that he had suffered an injury setback that would see him not return to action until late December. And even when December came, there was an issue. So that period was extended out. So until January, when he eventually returned. So Really, it's very, very unfortunate for Kai Havertz as a player, but he's going to be a huge miss for this Arsenal side because he does give this Arsenal side a different dimension. We know how he plays as a forward, likes to drop in midfield. With his he helps with the counter press. He seems to be enjoying playing behind that target man of a striker, and yeah, things were looking brighter for a player that had been returning for a long spell out through injury. Has started to look bright for him, and very unfortunate. Very unfortunate for him as a player, but more importantly, very unfortunate for the Arsenal because they need all their players to be fully fit and available because they are still firing on all cylinders. They are on all fronts, they are still in the UEFA Champions League. They're pushing for the Premier League title, which is not going to be a walk in the park. They are pushing for the FA Cup. They are in the finals of the Carabao Cup. So it's going to be really, really difficult. And they will need all their star players to be available for selection or when the important time comes. Good morning, Johnny. That's Pedri. Pedri is trying to pick a leaf from the son of Soweto, who forgot my name and called me George. So Pedri is trying to assign me another name. But anyways, good morning to you too, Pedri. I hope you're doing well this beautiful morning. So really, that's the unfortunate bit about this Arsenal side that they've literally had injury after injury all throughout the entire campaign. And had it not been for their squad depth, then perhaps we would be talking about a different position where perhaps they could be on the Premier League table. Remember, Kai Havertz gets injured at a time when Mikel Merino just underwent a successful surgery on his right foot. We're talking about a point in time when Bukayo Saka has missed the last 3 games through injury. He missed the game away to Leeds. He missed the game against Sunderland. In between there, he missed the game against Chelsea, and he got injured or felt an ego during the warm-up. So Martin Odegaard, in the aftermath of a beautiful cameo against Leeds United, has not played, the last two games for the Arsenal. That's against Sunderland and against Chelsea. So yes, he's back in training, but you never know. You never know. That means that I think was his 4th injury of the season. For Martin Odegaard, for Bukayo Saka, that was his 3rd injury of the season. So that's been the trend with Arsenal and Arsenal players this season. It's because they have a fairly good squad depth with quality that oftentimes, even when they've missed some of their stars, you've not felt a significant fall off in terms of their performances as expectedly you would be last season or the season prior to that. So that's it. Very, very interesting. Now let's move on to what we expect to be on the pitch in terms of the Arsenal before we go into yesterday's results, because they are equally critical and we'll get to them in a bit. But let's first go through with the preview of that Arsenal fixture against Brentford. Now, if there's one of them, I think one of the most difficult fixtures in the Premier League is a fixture against Brentford. Now, there could be a variation with who the opponent is, but for Arsenal, this is a very difficult fixture. They know that the Dyche Stadium is not an easy place to go. While they have won 4 of their last 5 meetings, and including one draw, which was last season in a 1-1 draw at the Emirates Stadium, Arsenal have won their last 2 trips away at Brentford, beating them by 3-1 and 1-0. Respectivity. For those of you that care to remember, during the 2023-2024 Premier League campaign, when Arsenal were once again trying to push for the Premier League title, you remember Kai Havertz scored a header off a Ben White cross. I think that was around the 85th something minute, 86th minute. Kai Havertz scored to make it 2-1, and that was a very, very crucial result for the Arsenal at the time. And so the game itself comes at a very, very significant point. There have been 9 meetings between the two sides. Only 2 have ended in a draw. Brentford have won 1 and they've lost 6. That victory coming at the start of the 2021-2022 Premier League campaign. For those of you that remember, it was the opening game of the season on a Friday night under the floodlights at the Dyche Stadium. Thomas Frank beat Mikel Arteta by 2-0. Ivan Toney, I think, among the goal scorers there. Before they went on to social media and said, "Nice kick, about with the boys. So nice kick about with the boys. Ever since then, he vowed to be revengeful whenever he meets a Brentford, and that's why they've won seven. Sorry, they've won. Let me see. They've won. Yeah, they've won six of the last eight in the meetings between those two sides. So really, so that's the season when he lost his three opening season games. So it's a very, very difficult fixture. And what makes it even more difficult is the kind of form that Brentford are in. It's also the kind of picture that they painted themselves in, particularly this season. When you look at their last five Premier League fixtures, they've only lost, I think, they've only lost two games. Yeah, they've only lost two games. Those games, those losses coming against Chelsea by 2-0 and against Nottingham Forest by 2-0. Aridis, they beaten up against Sunderland by 3-0, beat up against Aston Villa by 0-0 away at the Villa Park, and more recently, a 3-2 victory against Newcastle to complete a league double against the Magpies this season, having beaten them by 3-1, I think, in the first leg. So beautiful stuff there. On the other side for the Arsenal, they've drawn two of the last five. They've lost one, they've won two. Winning away to Leeds by 4-0, beating up against Sunderland by 3-0. Then a goalless draw against Liverpool and Nottingham Forest. That means Arsenal have kept 4 clean sheets in their last 5 Premier League fixtures. Really, they lost to Manchester United by 3-2. That was on March day 23. So now, whereas Arsenal, I mean, of course, they do have a former Brentford player in the name of David Raya, whereas they've been that good in keeping clean sheets, that 4 out of the last 5, they've kept clean sheets. I don't feel quite very encouraged saying that they will keep a clean sheet once again at the GTEC Stadium. Anything can happen, but it does look difficult because when you look at, of course, they're going to be without some of their key players like Kevin Shada, who will be suspended, but Dango Ouattara is available. He's had, he scored, I think, in the last couple of games. He scored for them against Aston Villa, and he scored for them the winning goal against Newcastle. Excuse me. So, Keith Andrews, at the start of the season, I was one of the doubters, the naysayers, who thought that they would struggle this season, that they would be relegation candidates, but they've been far from that by a long mile. Players like Jensen, Lewis Potter, Igor Thiago, very, very big danger man in that leading that line. Jordan Henderson in that midfield has been quite a rock alongside Janelt, who scored the equalizer last weekend to cancel out Steven Botman's lead against Newcastle. Aja, Van de Berg, Henry, Michael Kayode been one of the standout players as a right back. Komen Kelleher in goal, the one they signed from Liverpool. They have quite a very decent team, really. They have Aaron Hickey, Ethan Pinnock, Reece Nelson. This one is on loan from Arsenal, so you don't expect him to feature. But Mikel Damsgaard, Nathan Collins, now, I do think that Keith Andrews could set up with the back five. He could play a 5-4-1 kind of system, to try and counter Arsenal. Sit with a very low block, a mid block, defend deep, and look to catch Arsenal on the counter attack. Or if you get a set piece, capitalize on that. Long throw-ins from from Kayode, and things like that to try and gain an advantage. And for me, it's not too remote to think that Arsenal could drop points today. I don't know. I know Arsenal know the seriousness of this fixture. They know the gravity. They know what it means. They know what's at stake for them. But that doesn't mean that they cannot drop points. Anything can still happen. Excuse me. So really, when you look at it that way, that's what the fixture means for Brentford. But also for Brentford, it means that if they do win the game, they can move, 42 points level with Liverpool, who won yesterday away to Sunderland. So that's the significance of the game. Igor Thiago is the second top scorer of the Premier League as we speak, with I think 17 goals. Behind Brad Erling Haaland, who has 22, having scored against Fulham yesterday, and also scored a penalty for against Liverpool over the weekend. So he scored 2 in 2. That's Brad Erling Haaland. So really. But Igor Thiago is the guy that they will be looking to. He did score a penalty equally against Newcastle to extend his individual tally to 17, but he's been such a critical figure in that side. On the side of the Arsenal, should we expect any changes in terms of a probable starting lineup? Expect to see David Ryan goal, William Saliba, Gabriel Magalhaes, Ricardo Carafiori at left back, Yoran Timber at right back. Midfield, expect Martin Zubimendi alongside Declan Rice. And then the question is it Ebelechi Eze or is it Martin Odegaard? I think it could be Ebelechi Eze that starts in that number 10 role. And then you have Leandro Trossard, Noni Madueke, and Gabriel Jesus to start. That's my feeling. That's my feeling. But also given that Victor Gyökeres did not start the game against Sunderland, I wouldn't be too surprised if, and this is a big if Victor Gyökeres starts up front and then Gabriel Jesus comes off the bench, because that's what Mikel Arteta has been doing, altering those two in front. So, it's quite a very, very, difficult thing to have. But yeah, but possibly in the grand scheme of things, so that means Arsenal could be or will be without Mikel Merino, Max Tillman, Bukayo Saka, Leandro Trossard, Kai Havertz, and Martin Odegaard. All starters, really, besides Max Tillman. And that's because, when they say player subject to leg fitness test, usually it's about the medical team to pass the player to be deemed fit enough to play, or to say, we're going to need to be patient with this one, especially with some of these players. Look at Bukayo Saka. He's, like I said, this is, I think, his third injury in the course of the season. You remember after the first two or 3 weeks of the season, I had the hamstring injury, went out for a couple of weeks. Then there's another time he stepped aside. Really, so when you have players picking up issues here and there, you want to manage risk as much as possible, that you let them heal fully before they return to the competitive grass and get knocked around by opponent players, as often Arsenal players do. So, very difficult fixture, but I'm going to go with Arsenal to win this one by 2-1. I'm going to put my bank on Arsenal to win this one by 2-1. I'm taking note of the prediction because of its significance in our predictions game. Anyways, allow me move on to tomorrow's games. To the games that were played yesterday. Like I said, Man City, continued to win with an impressive 3-0 victory against Fulham. It was a game of two halves. Man City showed up in exponential style in the first half, did not return for the second half. It's a game that should have had 2 red cards, in my opinion. Kevin Tete, for his hair pull on Antoine Semenyo, have zero justification as to why a player would do that. That's a very unsporting character. You cannot pull an opponent's hair, regardless of the situation. So VAR reviewed that and decided to let it go. But for me, that's a red card. And then you had another red card as blatant as that tackle from behind on the ankle of Calvin Bassey by Phil Foden. But guess what? It wasn't given. Phil Foden walks away with the mere yellow card. I don't know if you guys have noticed. I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but ever since Rodri complained about match officials, there's been a shift in how Man City games are being handled. First of all, when Rodrigo Cascante seems to suggest that the referee was impartial in their 2-2 draw against Tottenham Hotspurs, he does not get sanctioned. When he says the referee was not neutral, he does not get sanctioned. There's no penalty. That's very questionable. Ordinarily, a player would be sanctioned. will be asked to pay a fine of whichever amount, £5,000, 10,000, whichever the amount is. 2, then we come to the Liverpool game. Mark Gay should have been sent off. Liverpool should have gotten a penalty. They did not. Fast forward, we come now. Let's be honest. I did not expect Fulham to do anything than draw or even win this game. I flat out expected them to lose. Why? Because Fulham versus Pep Guardiola himself, that was the 16th meeting between him and that Fulham side. And in 15 games, he had won 15 out of 15, 12 in the Premier League, 2 in the FA Cup, and 1 in the Carabao Cup. So yesterday was the 16th. But also, we're talking a team that had gone 19 games or that were winless or pointless versus Man City in 19 games. So yesterday was the 20th. Man City just know how to win that fixture. But nonetheless, again, they had a very, very impressive first half. Very electric. Nico O'Reilly, Anton Semenyo, squad one provided an assist. Rico Ruiz on target. But Erling Haaland, Phil Foden providing the assist. They looked sharp. They looked at it. They looked like the kind of Man City that you would dread watching the couple of seasons ago when they would just blow away teams, especially the second part of the season when they would go on winning spells of 14, 13 games, 15 games towards the end of the season. And it looks like, starting with the Liverpool fixture, which was a huge constant confidence booster for them, it has started to take that direction. Now, it's not to say that they cannot fall away, but for now, it does look that way. So yesterday they won by 3-0. I say it was a game of two halves because Man City in the second half did not return. They just did not come out. They were lackluster. They dropped the ball. They didn't fight enough. They gave away spaces. Fulham had their fair share of domination on the ball. In the end, Man City dominated the ball to the tune of 56% compared to Fulham's 44%. Man City had an XG of 1.3. That was diminished by their poor performances in the second half. Fulham had an XG of 1.42. Then shots on goal were 13 to 14. That's between Man City and Fulham, respectively. Man City had 5 shots on target. Fulham had 3. Harry Wilson in the first half forced Gianluigi Donnarumma into a save. There was another attempt by Alex Iwobi that was deflected away or blocked away by Ruben Diaz. Then you had another attempt by Emily Smith-Rowe around the 42nd minute of the game when Raul Jimenez laid the ball for him, but he just couldn't get his foot to it. So you had those moments. Then Nico O'Reilly, this one, before scoring, he had 2 attempts from distance on goal, but was quite unsuccessful. So I thought those were key takeaways, but a goal from Anton Semenyo in the 12th minute, in the 24th minute. In the 24th minute was his 13th of the season. Then 6 minutes later, Nico O'Reilly scored with Semenyo providing the assist, and then brought Erling Haaland in the 39th minutes, respectively. So they did score in quick succession to give Man City a 3-0 lead, for which Fulham were never able to respond to eventually. So it finished 3-0. But like I said, Kevin Tate should have received a red card in that game, in my opinion, for pulling Antoine Semenyo's hair, and so did Phil Foden for his high tackle on Calvin Bassey. He should have received a red card for that. I do not see or understand any reason whatsoever. He's not called Kevin Tete. He's Kenny Tete. I don't know why I keep calling him Kevin. But yeah, I thought that was, very significant yesterday. Also yesterday, Aston Villa left it late as they beat up against Brighton and Hove Albion by 1-0. A goal that we thought had been scored by Tyrone Mings. Turns out, according to the Premier League website, it went down as an own goal by Henshelwood there. But regardless of who scored, that was a very significant victory for Aston Villa as it moved them to 50 points, 6 behind Arsenal, who played today, and 3 behind Man City. Yes, 3 behind Man City there for Aston Villa. Then in the other result, like I said, Nottingham Forest and Crystal and Wolverhampton Wanderers shared the spoils in a goalless draw. While at the Stadium of Light, Liverpool beat up against beat up against Sunderland by a goal to nil to become the first team this season to beat up against Sunderland at the Stadium of Light. Beautiful performance from the captain. That's Virgil van Dijk, who scored the only goal of the game. It was a game where so many chances were created, but so few were taken. I mean, Sunderland were like a Berlin Wall, were like a Chinese wall. They blocked shot after shot, shot after shot. Sunderland had an XG of 0.6% compared to Liverpool's 2.3%, and yet they only scored 1 goal. Liverpool edging the possession to the tune of 57% compared to Sunderland's 43%. Total shots on goal, Sunderland had 11, Liverpool had 23. 2 for Sunderland on target, 3 only for Liverpool were on target. That's because so many of them were being blocked out by defenders like Ballard. Liverpool had 11 corners, Sunderland had 3. 2 big saves for either side, while 1 big chance was created by Liverpool. So a very, very significant result there for for Anna Slot. There, he will take it. It takes him to 42 points, while he remains 6th on the Premier League log, because despite Chelsea and Man City drawing their games, they still remain ahead of him or ahead of them on the Premier League table after 26 games played. Then quickly in the other game or the other results. In the other results, we saw Burnley come from 2 goals down to beat up against Crystal Palace by 3 goals to 2. All goals scored in the opening first half. I mean, that was crazy. I did not expect the game to be that high scoring. I did not expect that both teams would have the kind of go at it as they did. But Jürgen Strand-Larsen scored his first 2 goals in Crystal Palace colours in the 17th minute and the 33rd minute, respectively, while Hanbo Mejbri scored to pull one back in the 40th minute, and then Jadon Anthony scored in the 44th minute to restore parity, to make it 2-2. And then in the 2nd minute of added time of the first half, Jefferson Lemar scored an own goal to give Burnley the lead. Now, Crystal Palace, in all fairness, tried to push for an equalizer, but were unsuccessful, including a brilliant attempt from Ismail Sarr very late on in the game that was denied by Martin Dubravka, who was in the Burnley goal. At the end of the day, Crystal Palace had a 64.5% ball possession compared to Burnley's 35.5, 1.8 XG for Crystal Palace and only 0.53 for Burnley. 21 shots on goal. That's for Crystal Palace compared to 8 for Burnley. 3 were on target for Burnley and 3 were on target for Crystal Palace. So the margins came in that push, in that bit of clinicalness. But it will be a difficult or a tough, a sort of result to take for Oliver Glasner and Crystal Palace, especially having come into that game on the back of having won over the weekend against Brighton by a goal to 0. So yeah, those were the results from yesterday, but also yesterday was a significant day in the Premier League, and for James Milner in particular. He was the first half substitute, I think, coming on, was it for Carlos Baliba? Was it in that Brighton midfield to make his 653rd Premier League appearance? Yes, that is equal to Gareth Barry's record there. So that was equally significant or very, very important to take note of, that he made his 653rd appearance for having played for teams like Leeds United, having played for teams like Liverpool, now Brighton. Of course, he had a stint with I'm trying to remember. Leeds, Liverpool, Man City, yes, Brighton, Gareth Barry played for Aston Villa, Everton, and I think Man City as well. You know, so yeah, looks like he will be breaking that record of most Premier League appearances so far. There, that's for James Milner. Very, very. I mean, I mean, for you to play that many games in the Premier League alone, that means consistency. That means being injury free for most of the time, because all the others that are in the top 10 have since retired, because you have Gareth Barry, you have Ryan Giggs, Frank James Lampard, David Moyes, Mark Schwarzer, Gareth Speed, Emil Heskey, Jamie Carragher, Phil Neville, all those are retired. So nobody is going to catch him. Nobody is going to catch him. Anyways, guys, that's been it for this morning's broadcast. I have a meeting to get to, so you will allow me to wrap it up here. But like I said, we will look to do an extended conversation about Tottenham Hotspurs and perhaps Nottingham Forest there for their managerial changes or sackings. It is part of football. Today you have a job, tomorrow you suddenly don't have it. So allow me to say thank you so much, son of Soweto and Pedri, for being part of the engagement. So have a blessed day, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye for now.